New videos every day.
So I'm John Breeding. It's July 2nd, 2012 in Austin, Texas. And this is chapter 6 on my video series of Leaving Home, the journey from birth to emerging adulthood. This is the last chapter of part 2. It's basically a few more thoughts on parenting in the early years. Parenting in a way that best supports and allows the eventual possibility and prospect of children leaving home. So it's a few more ideas about parenting, particularly ideas about parenting within a civilization that is highly distressed. As usual, I'll start out with a few quotes selected by Leonard Roy Frank. These are some choice bits from quite a long time ago. John Locke, 1693. You must do nothing before him which you would not have him imitate. That speaks for itself. And here's a nice corollary of that from Austin O'Malley. This would have been in the late 1800s, so about 120, 30 years ago. Austin O'Malley. The perjurer's mother told white lies. The perjurer's mother told white lies. And here's Arthur Schopenhauer, the famous philosopher, from his studies in pessimism. So this would have been about almost 2 centuries ago. There is no absurdity so palpable but that it may be firmly planted in the human head if you only begin to inculcate it before the age of 5 by constantly repeating it with an air of great solemnity. There is no absurdity that cannot be inculcated in the mind of a child with an absorbent mind who is so vulnerable to conditioning and so in awe of their parents and the caregivers in their world. So there's a great responsibility there. And last, from Maria Montessori, this is more recent, but still 70 years ago. The capacity for free choice is strengthened by exercise. So if you want free choice and self-determination, you exercise that. And you allow your child to exercise that. Again, that obedience thing is overrated. Free choice, self-determination, strengthened by exercise. And if you've lost that aspect of power in your own life, you got to build those muscles again. All right, so here's just a few thoughts on parenting within our civilization. In fact, I'm going to read you the first couple paragraphs of the chapter. First, remember to trust your children and take delight in their presence. It is true that our very long dependency period and intense vulnerability can result in horrific patterns. Aggression and war, fear and greed. Our vulnerability to conditioning. We can be hurt and conditioned in ways, and are in ways that we end up acting out these horrible patterns that look in the society look like war and aggression and fear and greed. This is caused by trauma and conditioning. The good news is that when our real needs are met, when our essential needs are met, human essence naturally unfolds. We see the sweet warmth, vitality, and instinctual intelligence of babies develop into more mature forms of loving affection, creative intelligence, and zestful engagement with life. That's the good news. You can trust that trajectory if you meet the needs and are attuned and sensitive and supportive of the real needs of the developing young person. The ways of natural childbirth and attachment parenting, breastfeeding on demand, co-sleeping, allowing emotional expression, these are wonderfully proper and nurturing as they ever were. Treasure the wisdom and support of midwives. Embrace the sacred natural experience of pregnancy and childbirth. carry your babies for that first 6 months to a year. That way, they learn and know in the deepest way the experience of what great pleasure it ought to be to live in a human body. Enjoy breastfeeding and sleeping with your children and all the joys and pleasure of physical touch and affection. That said, here's a little caveat. We all need help at times with feelings of guilt and overwhelm that inevitably crop up when we fail to live up to an ideal, such as attachment parenting. It's basically to really do, full theoretical attachment parenting in our crazy world, modern world. And so sometimes we feel like we can't measure up and we feel guilty and bad when we don't do it. The good news is that we and our children are intelligent and resilient. Also good is that children do not need perfect parents. They just need good enough, imperfect parents who never give up. You men know that there is no greater act you can do than to support and protect the presence of a safe, loving space for pregnancy and birth for our women and for the early experience of our children. All right, here's just a few more thoughts. Trust your children and your desire to be close to them. Also, trust their power and defiance. As Naomi Aldor said, we face head-on again and again the crucial decision to tame or to trust. I urge you to take delight in and give due respect to your children's developing power. Still, children need limits, and we need to be authentic. We need to be real, allow our feelings, honor our limits, and engage our children. Joseph Chilton Pearce's idea of the model imperative is worth highlighting again. The old maxim is that children learn from what we do, not what we say. Period. While Joe Pearce is in mind, he emphasizes, that ideas of attachment parenting and the importance of pregnancy and childbirth and early bonding and that kind of thing. But he also gives us other key advice to success in those early years, and it's called throw away your TV. So think about that. We do live in a troubled world. I wrote a 21st Century Manifesto for Parenting, which you can see on my website, wildestcolts.com. You can read it. I wrote that 21st Century Manifesto to address the fact that we live in a highly troubled world. So highlighting the ongoing need to protect our children from the overwhelming destruction of such things as unnecessary immunizations, toxic foods, militarism, gross materialism, and there's a list. So protection does come into play. We are all living in peril. That's the context in which we become parents today. One solace is that there's plenty for us to do, and that parenting rates at the top. Everything we do to raise loving, intelligent, aware people is vital for the individual and for all of us. Finally, whatever else you do, however you can, do not let your children's natural affinity with all that is natural be forsaken. Take your children to wild places. Make sure they spend a good deal of their formative years in the natural world outdoors. See that they spend lots of time with wind and water and all kinds of life forms, what we call the more than human world, or in indigenous American terms, with all my relations. That's the best thing you can do for your children. And it's a tremendous deprivation if you don't. I want to end with a short prose piece by Rachel Carson, who was famous for Silent Spring, that sort of triggered the environmental movement and the challenging of DDT and things like that. But she wrote this wonderful piece called Sense of Wonder that I want to share with you. If a child is to keep alive his inborn sense of wonder without any gifts from the fairies, he needs the companionship of at least one adult who can share it, rediscovering with him the joy, the excitement, and mystery of the world we live in. Parents often have a sense of inadequacy when confronted, on the one hand, with the eager, sensitive mind of a child, and on the other, with a world of complex physical nature inhabited by a life so various and unfamiliar that it seems hopeless to reduce it to order and knowledge. In a mode of self-defeat, they exclaim, "How can I possibly teach my child about nature? Why, I don't even know one bird from another." I sincerely believe that for the child and for the parent seeking to guide him, it is not half so important to know as to feel. If facts are the seeds that later produce knowledge and wisdom, then the emotions and the impressions of the senses are the fertile soil in which the seeds must grow. The years of early childhood are the time to prepare the soil. Once the emotions have been aroused, a sense of the beautiful, the excitement of the new and the unknown, a feeling of sympathy, pity, admiration, or love, then we wish for knowledge about the object of our response. We connect emotionally, we connect experientially, then we bring the mind into play figuring it out. It tends not to be the other way around. Once found, it has lasting meaning. It is more important to pave the way for the child to want to know than to put him on a diet of facts he's not ready to assimilate. The point, simply, that I am making is spend time outdoors with your children outdoors, in the water, in the dirt, in the wind, on the mountains, in the trees, on the beach, in the backyard, in the park. That's a great gift. All right. Thank you very much.